There's a city in America where the downtown office vacancy rate just hit 30.7%, where the unemployment rate climbed to 5.7%, and where the casinos and hotels are still operating. But the businesses that used to feed off them, the dry cleaners, the print shops, the small restaurants, the local accountants, are quietly closing one storefront at a time. The city is Las Vegas. And it's not even the worst on this list. Across America, while the headlines argue about Amazon and Walmart and the tariff conversation, the real story is happening in 10 mid-sized American cities where small business openings have collapsed, where commercial vacancies have hit historic highs, and where the local economy is quietly being hollowed out, one shuttered storefront at a time. According to Coresight Research, more than 8,270 retail stores closed across America. According to the Kaplan Group's Q1 2025 analysis, 72.5% of U.S. cities saw office vacancy rates rise year over year, with the national average climbing to 20.8%. According to Cushman Wakefield, downtown commercial vacancy rates in the worst affected cities have hit 35% to 40% levels not seen since the 1970s. And underneath those numbers, the small businesses, the dentists, the insurance agents, the family-owned restaurants, the independent coffee shops are running the math and quietly choosing not to renew their leases. In this countdown, we're exposing 10 American cities where no one is opening businesses anymore in 2026. Not the cliché Detroit, Cleveland, Memphis story. The real one. The mid-sized cities where the structural decline is hitting Main Street faster than the political conversation is acknowledging. One city on this list saw its office vacancy rate climb 290 basis points year over year, the largest increase in the country. Another has the highest absolute count of small business closures of any city its size. A third just sold a major downtown office tower for 40% less than its previous purchase price. Think about it. You probably know a small business owner. You probably know one who closed in 2024 or 2025. You probably trusted that things are improving because the national economic data said so. The national data and the local reality have not been the same story for 5 years. Subscribe before your hometown business district makes the next list. Like the video if you've ever walked through a downtown and counted more for lease signs than open storefronts. Now you'll know why. Let's break it down. Number 10. Spokane, Washington. The eastern Washington city where the boom never quite arrived and the bust is hitting anyway. There's a city of about 230,000 in eastern Washington where the post-pandemic optimism didn't last, where commercial vacancy has climbed steadily, and where the small business closure rate has accelerated faster than the city's leadership has been willing to acknowledge. Welcome to Spokane. Spokane was supposed to be Washington State's affordable alternative to Seattle. Lower cost of living, less crowded. The eastern half of the state with its own economy, its own university, its own identity. For a few years during the pandemic, that pitch worked. Remote workers from Seattle moved east. Real estate appreciated. Small business openings briefly spiked. And then the math of running a small business in a small market caught up. The numbers. Spokane's commercial vacancy rate has climbed to roughly 18% in 2025, with downtown vacancy higher. The city's unemployment rate has hovered above the Washington state average for most of 2024 and 2025. Spokane's downtown has lost multiple anchor restaurants and retailers in the past 24 months, with closures including longtime Spokane institutions. The Spokane Convention Center bookings have not fully recovered to pre-pandemic levels, reducing foot traffic for downtown small businesses. And the city's small business loan default rate has climbed alongside the broader Washington state pattern, where the state added a 9.9% capital gains tax and increased estate tax pressure that hit small business owners considering succession planning. Reddit quote, Spokane was supposed to be the Seattle escape, and now it's just becoming Seattle's slower, sadder cousin. What it's like. Opening a business in Spokane in 2026 is like dating someone who's been complaining about their hometown for 10 years and is now genuinely surprised that nobody else wants to move there. Picture this. You're a young couple thinking about opening a coffee shop in downtown Spokane in spring 2026. The rent is 30% lower than Seattle. The build-out costs are similar. The foot traffic is roughly half. Your business plan needs $1.2 million in revenue to break even. You walk through downtown on a Tuesday at noon and count 14 people on a 3-block stretch. You do the math. You don't sign the lease. Where it gets uncomfortable, Spokane's structural problem is being a mid-sized city in a state designed for one large metro. Washington's tax structure has not been kind to small business owners. The state's capital gains tax, BO receipts tax, and estate tax structure have pushed many succession planning conversations towards selling and exiting rather than continuing. Spokane's downtown has improved in some pockets and quietly weakened in others. Sharp contrast. Spokane and Boise are both inland northwest cities of comparable size. Boise has had explosive growth and small business expansion through 2022, then a slowdown. Spokane never had the boom and is now absorbing the slowdown. Same region, very different demographic momentum. Spokane isn't failing because Spokane isn't a good place to live. It's failing because the math of opening a business in a mid-sized city with a high-tax state structure has tipped from doable to barely worth it for a generation of would-be entrepreneurs. Number 9. Tacoma, Washington. The Puget Sound city where Seattle's overflow stopped coming and the Joint Base Lewis McChord families started leaving. There's a city of about 220,000 in Washington's Puget Sound region where the post-Seattle migration has slowed, where the military base population has been thinning, and where the commercial vacancy rate has climbed steadily through 2025 and 2026. Welcome to Tacoma. Tacoma is the city Seattle tries to pretend is a separate metro. 30 miles south, major port, Joint Base Lewis McChord, one of the largest military installations on the West Coast. And underneath that economic anchor, a small business ecosystem that has been struggling to recover from pandemic disruptions, suffering from the regional cost of living squeeze, and now absorbing the consequences of federal hiring uncertainty. The numbers. Tacoma's commercial vacancy rate has climbed to roughly 17% in 2025, with downtown running higher. Tacoma's downtown has lost multiple retailers and restaurants in the past 24 months. Tacoma's economy is heavily dependent on Joint Base Lewis McChord, where federal civilian hiring has been frozen or reduced in 2025. The Port of Tacoma's container volume has been volatile due to tariff-related shipping disruptions. And Tacoma's small business owners face the same Washington state tax pressure as Seattle, with significantly lower foot traffic. Reddit quote, Tacoma is the city that gets all of Seattle's tax burden and none of Seattle's tech salaries. What it's like. Opening a business in Tacoma is like dating someone who shares an address with their famous, wealthy, slightly insufferable older sibling. Picture this. You're a Tacoma resident with a small business idea, a salon, a gym, a specialty food store. You research the market. The demographic data looks decent. The tax structure is the same as Seattle. The wage you'd have to pay is similar to Seattle. The revenue per customer is lower than Seattle. The math doesn't work the way it would 30 miles north, and the math doesn't work the way it would in Boise either. You decide to keep your day job. Where it gets uncomfortable, Tacoma's structural problem is being adjacent to a wealthier, more economically dynamic neighbor without sharing in its tax base or its market depth. The Joint Base employment provides a stable anchor, but federal workforce uncertainty has put pressure on local consumer spending. The city's downtown has had revitalization efforts, including new public spaces, but small business openings have not kept pace. Sharp contrast. Tacoma and Bellevue are both Seattle area cities. Bellevue has thrived as the East Side tech corridor. Tacoma has struggled to leverage its Puget Sound proximity into comparable economic growth. Same metro. Very different small business outcomes. Tacoma isn't failing because the port closed. It's failing because the cost structure of doing business in Washington, combined with the relative consumer spending of a non-tech corridor city, makes the math harder for small operators every year. Number 8. Bakersfield, California. The Central Valley oil city where the agriculture and the oil both started slowing, and the small businesses started closing. There's a city of about 415,000 in California's Central Valley where the oil industry has been in long-term decline, where agricultural automation has reduced farm employment, and where small business openings have lagged the rest of California for years. Welcome to Bakersfield. Bakersfield is the California city that doesn't fit California's image. Conservative, working class, Oil and agriculture driven, significantly cheaper cost of living than coastal California, and underneath, a structural shift that has put long-term pressure on the small business ecosystem. The numbers. Bakersfield's commercial vacancy rate has climbed to roughly 20% in 2025, well above the California state average. Kern County, where Bakersfield sits, has had one of the highest unemployment rates in California for years, often above 8%. California's oil production has declined dramatically since 2010, with Kern County production dropping from over 200 million barrels annually to roughly 90 million barrels. Bakersfield's downtown has had multiple high-profile retail and restaurant closures since 2024, and California's tax structure, while not directly the same pressure as a coastal city, still applies to Bakersfield's small business owners despite the lower revenue ceiling. Reddit quote, "Bakersfield is the city that pays California taxes on Texas wages. What it's like. Opening a business in Bakersfield is like dating someone whose family has been in slow-motion financial transition for 20 years and isn't quite sure what their actual income is. Picture this. You're a young Bakersfield entrepreneur thinking about opening a small restaurant in 2026. The demographic data looks decent. The cost of commercial space is reasonable by California standards. The labor cost is high because California's minimum wage applies. The customer spending is lower than coastal California because the wages are lower. The math doesn't work the way it would in Fresno or Modesto, and definitely doesn't work the way it would in Texas. You table the idea. Where it gets uncomfortable, Bakersfield's structural problem is being a California city without California's economic diversification. The oil sector continues to contract. Agriculture continues to automate. The state's environmental regulations apply. The state's labor cost structure applies, and the local revenue ceiling is significantly lower than coastal California. Sharp contrast. Bakersfield and Fresno are both Central Valley California cities. Fresno has more agricultural diversity and a slightly stronger metro economy. Bakersfield has been more dependent on a single sector that's been in long-term decline. Same valley, slightly different outcomes. Bakersfield isn't failing because Bakersfield residents don't work hard. It's failing because the structural cost of doing business in California, combined with the structural decline of the local economic anchors, has made the math worse every year, and the small businesses that used to open are quietly choosing not to. Hey, before we get into the rest of the list, the cities we're about to cover are the ones where commercial vacancy rates have hit historic highs, where downtown foot traffic has not recovered, and where the small business ecosystem is being hollowed out faster than anyone in the local newspaper is willing to write about. If this list has been useful, hit subscribe, because the next one we're working on is 10 American towns where the last bank branch closed, and you'll want the names. Like the video if you've ever walked into a for-lease storefront on a Saturday afternoon and noticed that 4 of the 6 storefronts on that block were also for lease. Drop a comment if you live in one of these 10 cities or own a small business there. Real conversations happen in the comments, and I read them. Now let's keep going. Number 7. Wichita, Kansas. The aerospace city where Boeing left, the small businesses kept closing, and the Kansas tax structure didn't help. There's a city of about 395,000 in central Kansas where the aerospace economy has been hit by Boeing's contraction, where the Kansas state tax structure provides little relief for small business owners, and where the commercial vacancy rate has climbed steadily through 2024 and 2025. Welcome to Wichita. Wichita is the city aviation built. For decades, the air capital of the world, with Boeing, Beechcraft, Cessna, Spirit Aerosystems, and Learjet all major employers. Boeing announced its departure from Wichita in 2014. The city has been adjusting ever since. The small business ecosystem has been adjusting along with it. The numbers. Wichita's commercial vacancy rate has climbed, to roughly 19% in 2025. Boeing closed its Wichita operations in 2014, eliminating thousands of direct jobs and significantly more in the supply chain. Spirit Aerosystems, Wichita's largest manufacturer, faced significant production challenges in 2024 and 2025 related to Boeing's 737 MAX issues, with layoffs affecting thousands of Wichita area workers. Wichita's downtown has had revitalization efforts, but small business openings have not kept pace with closures. Kansas's tax structure has been incrementally cut at the state level, but remains higher than neighboring states like Missouri and Oklahoma for many small businesses. Reddit quote: Wichita's economy has been one Boeing decision away from collapse for 30 years, and the latest Boeing decision didn't help. What it's like. Opening a business in Wichita is like dating someone whose stable, dependable career has been on a slow downward trajectory since 2008, and they keep insisting they're between opportunities. Picture this. You're a Wichita native who returned home after working in Kansas City with savings and a small business idea. You research the market. The cost of commercial space is reasonable. The labor cost is moderate. The customer base is shrinking. The Spirit AeroSystems layoffs that hit your former classmates' households have reduced consumer spending across the metro. The math is harder than you expected. You decide to give it 18 months. Most don't make it that long. Where it gets uncomfortable, Wichita's structural problem is being almost entirely dependent on a single industry. Aviation manufacturing remains the city's economic anchor. When Boeing contracts, when Spirit AeroSystems faces production challenges, when the global aerospace market shifts, Wichita feels it before most other cities do. Sharp contrast. Wichita and Tulsa are similar mid-sized cities in neighboring states. Tulsa has diversified into energy services and tech. Wichita has remained more concentrated in aviation. Same planes, very different economic resilience. Wichita isn't failing because aviation is going away. It's failing because aviation has consolidated, the supply chain has thinned, and the small business ecosystem that used to grow alongside it has been quietly contracting for over a decade. Number 6. Tulsa, Oklahoma. The energy services city where the oil money keeps coming and going, and the small businesses keep adjusting to the volatility. There's a city of about 411,000 in northeastern Oklahoma where the energy services economy has been volatile, where the city's small business ecosystem has been absorbing the consequences, and where the Oklahoma insurance crisis has created additional pressure on operators. Welcome to Tulsa. Tulsa is the city Oklahoma points to when it wants to talk about something other than Oklahoma City. Strong cultural identity, real estate that's affordable, the Tulsa remote program that paid people $10,000 to move there during the pandemic, and underneath, an economy heavily tied to energy services with all the volatility that implies. The numbers. Tulsa's commercial vacancy rate has climbed to roughly 18% in 2025. Oklahoma's average home insurance premium hit $4,623 a year, the third highest in the nation, with rates climbing 51% since 2019, putting pressure on Tulsa's small business owners as well as homeowners. Tulsa's energy services economy has been volatile, with major employers including ONEOK, Williams Companies, and Helmerich Payne all subject to oil price fluctuations. The Tulsa Remote Program, while successful at attracting individual relocators, has not produced enough small business expansion to offset closures in the broader economy. Reddit quote: Tulsa is the only city where you can have an oil boom and a small business contraction at the same time. What it's like. Opening a business in Tulsa is like dating someone whose family has very volatile finances, sometimes hosting amazing parties, sometimes asking to borrow money for groceries. Picture this. You're an entrepreneur who moved to Tulsa for the remote program in 2022, planning to launch a small business after 18 months. You found the housing affordable, the community welcoming, the food scene impressive for the city's size. You looked at commercial real estate. You researched the small business loan market. You discovered that Oklahoma's home insurance crisis was also affecting commercial insurance, that the energy industry's volatility translates directly to small business cash flow predictability, and that the Tulsa market is smaller than it looks once you factor in the customer base outside the energy and finance sectors. You're still in Tulsa. You haven't opened the business yet. Where it gets uncomfortable, Tulsa's structural problem is being economically tied to commodities and to a state that has the third highest insurance costs in the country. The energy services sector remains the anchor. The state's insurance market has been disrupted. The small business ecosystem has been absorbing both pressures simultaneously. Sharp contrast. Tulsa and Oklahoma City are both major Oklahoma cities about 100 miles apart. Oklahoma City has more government and aerospace anchors. Tulsa has more energy services concentration. Both are absorbing volatility, but Tulsa's small business ecosystem has been hit harder by the combined pressures. Tulsa isn't failing because Tulsa lacks character. It's failing because the combined pressures of energy volatility, insurance costs, and a small absolute customer base make the math harder for small operators than the population statistics suggest. Number 5. Boise, Idaho. The Mountain West. Darling that became the Mountain West margin call, where the migration crested, the housing market corrected, and the small business openings collapsed. There's a city of about 240,000 in southwestern Idaho where the post-pandemic boom turned into post-pandemic correction, where home values are essentially flat year over year, where foreclosure filings are up 94% year over year, and where small business openings have collapsed alongside the housing market. Welcome to Boise. Boise was the migration darling of 2020 to 2022. The cheaper Denver, the cheaper Seattle, the cheaper Austin. The pitch was simple. Mountains, real estate that wasn't terrifying, no state income tax on Social Security, and a tax structure that looked attractive to California refugees. The pitch worked for 3 years. Then the math broke. The numbers. Boise's home appreciation peaked at 26.3% in May 2021, according to construction coverage analysis of Redfin data. By January 2026, year-over-year price growth had collapsed to just 1.1%. Idaho recorded 206 foreclosure filings in October 2025 alone, up 94.34% year over year. Boise's commercial vacancy rate has climbed to roughly 17% in 2025. And Boise's small business openings have not kept pace with the population growth that arrived between 2020 and 2022. The Tax Foundation moved Idaho's small business climate ranking down 4 spots in its 2026 State Business Tax Climate Index. Reddit quote, "Boise was supposed to be the next big thing. Now it's just the place that nobody's surprised about anymore." What it's like. Opening a business in Boise in 2026 is like dating someone who used to be the most popular person at the party, and now everyone's just kind of moved on to the next thing. Picture this. You moved to Boise from California in 2021. You bought a house, got a job, and started saving for a small business. You were going to open a wine bar in 2024. You held off because of the housing market. You held off again in 2025 because of the labor cost. You're now in 2026 watching foreclosures climb 94% year over year, watching home values stagnate, watching commercial spaces sit on the market for 6 months, and watching a city that boomed go quiet. You haven't opened the wine bar. Are not sure when you will. Where it gets uncomfortable, Boise's structural problem is being priced for a migration wave that has already crested. The Micron $15 billion expansion and the Meta $800 million data center are real economic anchors, but the small business ecosystem that grew during the pandemic was priced for a boom that didn't sustain. Sharp contrast. Boise and Salt Lake City are both Mountain West cities of similar profile. Salt Lake City has continued to grow modestly with more diversification. Boise's growth has stalled. Same region, very different post-2022 trajectories. Boise isn't failing because the mountains stopped being beautiful. It's failing because the small business ecosystem was built for the migration of 2020 to 2022, and the migration ended, and the math hasn't reset. Number 4. Sacramento, California. The state capital where the office vacancy hit 11%, the iconic tower sold for 40% less, and the small businesses kept watching it happen. There's a city of about 525,000 in California's Central Valley, the state capital of California, where the downtown office vacancy has climbed to roughly 11%, where the iconic Wells Fargo Tower at 400 Capitol Mall just sold for 40% less than its previous purchase price, and where small business openings have not kept pace with closures since 2023. Welcome to Sacramento. Sacramento is California's state capital, third largest metro in California, anchor of the Central Valley's most populous region. For most of the 20th century, the city's economy was built on state government, agriculture, and the supply chains that fed both. The state government workforce remains the city's largest single employer, and state government workforces don't generate the kind of small business spillover that tech, finance, or hospitality do. The numbers. Sacramento's downtown office vacancy rate has climbed to roughly 11% in 2025. The 400 Capitol Mall building, also known as Wells Fargo Tower, sold in 2024 for approximately 40% less than its previous purchase price, and where small business openings have not kept pace with closures since 2023. California's state government workforce has been gradually reducing in-office requirements, with hybrid and remote work continuing to limit downtown foot traffic. Sacramento's small business closures have outpaced openings in 2024 and 2025, particularly in the downtown core and the K Street commercial district. California's substantial budget gap of nearly $47 billion for 2024 to 2025 has triggered hiring freezes and contract reductions that affect the Sacramento small business ecosystem. Reddit, quote, "Sacramento is the city where the government workers stopped coming downtown, and the businesses that fed off them stopped existing. What it's like. Opening a business in Sacramento is like dating someone who works for the state, has government health insurance, and is genuinely uninterested in changing the routine that's worked for 30 years. Picture this. You're a small business owner in Midtown Sacramento in 2026. Your shop has been open for 8 years. Pre-pandemic, you had reliable foot traffic from state workers, lobbyists, and the ecosystem around them. Post-pandemic, the state workers come in 3 days a week, the lobbyists meet remotely as often as they meet in person, and the ecosystem has thinned. Your revenue is 70% of what it was in 2019. Your rent has gone up. Your labor costs have gone up. You're considering not renewing your lease in 2026. Where it gets uncomfortable, Sacramento's downtown business ecosystem was structurally built around a 5-day-a-week state government workforce. That workforce now operates on hybrid schedules, sometimes formally, sometimes informally. The downtown has not adapted fast enough. The small businesses are absorbing the consequences. Sharp contrast. Sacramento and Austin are both state capitals. Austin has thrived through tech sector migration and significant private investment. Sacramento has not had a comparable private sector growth story. Same state capital function, very different small business momentum. Sacramento isn't failing because state government left. It's failing because the relationship between the state government workforce and the downtown small business ecosystem changed in 2020, and the city has not built the alternative customer base that other capitals have. Number 3. Tucson, Arizona. The Sonoran desert city where the snowbirds keep coming for 4 months and leaving for 8, and the small businesses can't make the math work on a tourism-driven calendar. There's a city of about 545,000 in southern Arizona, where home prices have posted year-over-year declines between 3.8% and 6.1%, where the commercial vacancy rate has climbed steadily, and where small business openings have struggled with the seasonal economy that defines the region. Welcome to Tucson. Tucson is the second largest city in Arizona, anchor of the southern Arizona economy, home to the University of Arizona, Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, and one of the largest snowbird populations in the country. The university and the base provide stable anchors. The snowbird economy provides 4 months of vibrant activity and 8 months of significantly reduced spending. And the small business ecosystem absorbs the consequences of that seasonality. The numbers. Tucson home prices have posted year-over-year declines between 3.8% and 6.1%, putting the metro in the top 5 worst-performing major real estate markets in America. Tucson's commercial vacancy rate has climbed to roughly 16% in 2025. The University of Arizona, while a stable anchor, has had budget pressures that have reduced student spending power and faculty hiring. Davis-Monthan Air Force Base employment has remained stable, but federal civilian workforce uncertainty has created secondary pressure on the regional economy. Arizona's broader housing market correction, with statewide values down 6.8% over the past year, has affected consumer spending and small business cash flow. Reddit, quote, "Tucson is the only city where the snowbirds save the economy 4 months a year, and the locals try to stretch that into 12. What it's like. Opening a business in Tucson is like dating someone who's only really emotionally available from November to March. Picture this. You opened a small specialty food store in Tucson in 2022. The first 3 winters were great. The summers were brutal. Your monthly revenue swings from $80,000 in February to $25,000 in July. You've been managing the cash flow. You've been making it work. Then 2025 happened. The summer was longer. The snowbird season started later. The local consumer spending dropped because the housing market correction made everyone nervous. You're not sure 2026 will be better. You're considering closing. Where it gets uncomfortable, Tucson's structural problem is the seasonality combined with the housing market correction, combined with the federal workforce uncertainty. The University of Arizona and Davis-Monthan provide some baseline stability, but small businesses operate on monthly cash flow, not on year-over-year averages. Sharp contrast. Tucson and Phoenix are both Arizona desert cities. Phoenix has had a larger and more diversified economy with the TSMC semiconductor expansion as a major economic anchor. Tucson has not had a comparable private sector growth driver. Same desert, very different economic gravity. Tucson isn't failing because the Sonoran Desert is uniquely difficult. It's failing because the small business model that worked when snowbirds arrived in October and stayed through April no longer works when seasonal patterns are shifting and the local consumer base is absorbing housing market and economic uncertainty simultaneously. Number 2. San Antonio, Texas. The seventh largest city in America, where the downtown CBD vacancy hit 31.4%, where home sellers outnumber buyers by 109%, and where the small business ecosystem is absorbing it all in real time. There's a city of about 1.5 million in South Texas where the downtown office vacancy has climbed to 31.4%, where the housing market correction has tipped sellers heavily over buyers, and where the small business closures have been outpacing openings since 2023. Welcome to San Antonio. San Antonio is the city most Americans don't immediately think of when they think of Texas success. The Alamo, the Riverwalk, a military presence, the seventh largest city in America by population, and underneath, a downtown CBD that has emptied out faster than the city's leadership has been willing to acknowledge. The numbers. San Antonio's downtown office vacancy rate hit 31.4% in late 2024, among the worst in the country. San Antonio sellers outnumber home buyers by 109% per Redfin's March 2026 data. San Antonio's downtown has lost multiple anchor retailers and restaurants in the past 24 months. The city's tourism economy has been recovering, but has not fully returned to 2019 levels. Texas's overall housing oversupply has hit San Antonio harder than Austin or Dallas, with the city's smaller corporate relocation base providing less buffer. Reddit quote, San Antonio's downtown is what happens when a city becomes more famous for its tourist district than its actual economy. What it's like. Opening a business in San Antonio's downtown is like dating someone whose dating profile is mostly stunning vacation photos and very little about their actual life. Picture this. You're a young professional couple in San Antonio in 2026 with a small business idea, a wine bar, a specialty bakery, a boutique hotel. You research the market. The Riverwalk has solid tourist traffic. The downtown core, 4 blocks away from the Riverwalk, has 31.4% office vacancy. The local foot traffic doesn't support the rent. The tourist traffic supports the rent only on the Riverwalk corridor. You either compete on the Riverwalk corridor against established operators, or you take the lower rent space 4 blocks away and hope for the foot traffic that isn't coming. Most opt out. Where it gets uncomfortable, San Antonio's structural problem is being a tourism-anchored city without the corporate relocation base of Austin or the energy services anchor of Houston. The Riverwalk is a real economic engine. The rest of downtown has not recovered to pre-pandemic foot traffic levels. The small business ecosystem that depended on office worker spending has been hit hardest. Sharp contrast. San Antonio and Austin are both Texas cities along the I-35 corridor, about 80 miles apart. Austin has had explosive corporate relocation growth with related small business expansion. San Antonio has not had a comparable corporate relocation story. Same state, very different small business outcomes. San Antonio isn't failing because the Riverwalk stopped being beautiful. It's failing because the structural office vacancy in the downtown CBD, combined with the housing oversupply and the absence of a strong corporate relocation engine, has made the math worse for small operators every quarter. Number 1. Las Vegas, Nevada. The city where the casinos run 24 hours a day, the office buildings sit at 30% vacancy. The small business ecosystem is being hollowed out, and almost nobody outside Nevada is paying attention. There's a city of about 660,000 in southern Nevada, the most tourism-dependent major city in America, where the downtown CBD vacancy has hit 30.7%, where the unemployment rate has climbed to 5.7%, where total home sales hit their lowest level since 2007, and where small business closures have been outpacing openings for the past 18 months. Welcome to Las Vegas. Las Vegas is the most tourism-dependent major city in America. About 30% of the metro area's economy depends on hospitality, gaming, and convention services, and underneath that famous economic anchor, a small business ecosystem that has been quietly collapsing. The numbers. Las Vegas's downtown CBD office vacancy hit 30.7% in late 2024. Las Vegas's unemployment rate climbed to roughly 5.7% in 2025, well above the national average. Total Las Vegas home sales in 2025 were the lowest since 2007. Active inventory in Las Vegas climbed 15.9% year over year, nearly triple the national gain. Sellers in Las Vegas outnumber buyers by 101% per Redfin's March 2026 data. Las Vegas convention attendance has not fully recovered to 2019 levels, with several major conventions reducing scale or moving to other cities. Las Vegas's downtown small business ecosystem, including iconic downtown Las Vegas restaurants like Therapy and Hogs Heifer Saloon, has experienced multiple high-profile closures in 2025. Reddit, quote, "Las Vegas is what happens when a city forgets that its locals exist." What it's like. Opening a business in Las Vegas in 2026 is like dating someone who's beautiful, charismatic, addicted to gambling, and quietly running out of money. Picture this. You moved to Las Vegas for the no state income tax appeal in 2022. You started a small business in 2023. The first year was good. The second year was harder than expected. By 2026, you're watching tourism plateau, conventions shrink, locals tighten spending because home values aren't appreciating and unemployment is rising. And the office buildings near your shop sit at 30% vacancy. Your revenue is 65% of what you projected. Your rent has gone up. Your wholesale costs have gone up because of tariffs. You're not sure how much longer you can keep going. Where it gets uncomfortable, Las Vegas's structural problem is being economically dependent on a single sector that's been more volatile post-pandemic than the city's leadership predicted. The conventions have not all returned. The international tourism has been affected by visa policy changes. The local consumer base has been squeezed by housing market softness and rising unemployment. And the small business ecosystem absorbs all of it. Sharp contrast. Las Vegas and Phoenix are both Sunbelt desert cities of comparable profile. Phoenix has diversified into tech, semiconductor manufacturing, and finance. Las Vegas has remained heavily concentrated in hospitality and gaming. Same desert, very different economic resilience. Las Vegas isn't failing because the lights went out. It's failing because the structural dependence on tourism, hospitality, and conventions has not adapted. The local consumer base has been squeezed, and the small business ecosystem that depended on a 24/7 economy has been quietly hollowed out while the headlines focus on the Strip. So there it is. 10 American cities where no one is opening businesses anymore, on the public record, in commercial vacancy data, in small business closure tracking, in housing market reports. Almost nobody outside these cities reads. Cities where the downtown CBD vacancy rate has hit historic highs. Cities where the small business ecosystem is being absorbed by structural shifts the political conversation hasn't caught up with. Cities where the local newspaper still runs upbeat stories about new restaurants opening, while the data shows openings are running at 70% of closures. The American city, where small businesses are still opening in 2026. Places like Austin, Nashville, Charlotte, Columbus, Indianapolis are not winning because they're trendy. They're winning because they have specific economic engines, diversified employment bases, and small business climates that haven't been hollowed out by single-sector dependency. The 10 cities on this list represent the rest of America. The state capitals that lost their downtown lunch crowds. The Mountain West boomtowns that crested. The desert cities that depended on tourism that didn't fully return. The aerospace and oil cities that depended on industries that consolidated. The Central Valley cities that absorbed California's tax structure without California's growth. The good news, you can know this. The Cushman-Wakefield reports are publicly summarized. The CoreSite Research Closure Tracker runs continuously. Local chambers of commerce publish quarterly small business reports. You can read this. Most people don't. Most people drive past closed storefronts on the way to a chain store and never connect the dots. The reason no one is opening businesses in these 10 cities anymore is because the structural conditions have shifted faster than the local economic narratives have updated. The math is harder, the customers are fewer, the cost is higher, the risk is greater, and the would-be entrepreneurs are quietly choosing not to take the bet. If this list helped, share it with the friend who keeps insisting downtown is coming back. Hit subscribe, because next we're breaking down 10 American towns where the last bank branch closed, and you'll want to see if your town is on the list. Drop a comment if you live in one of these 10 cities, or own a small business there. And remember, the worst small business climate isn't the loud one, it's the quiet one where the storefront on your block has been for lease for 18 months and nobody mentions it.